Nobody could explain what they were seeing. More than 300 inmates stood completely still inside one prison yard. No one shouted. No one argued. No one moved without waiting for a signal. The correctional officers watched from the towers with confused faces. The prison was full of dangerous criminals, yet every single person seemed to be following the silent orders of one inmate. His name was Ethan Brooks. He did not wear a badge. He did not have the highest prison job. He was locked inside the same walls as everyone else. But somehow, he controlled hundreds of inmates. If Ethan looked at someone, that person obeyed. If Ethan nodded once, people changed places without asking questions. If Ethan stayed quiet, the whole prison became quiet too. Even the toughest gang members waited for his approval before making a move. The prison staff had one question that no one could answer. How could one prisoner become more powerful than every gang leader inside the prison? Then, something happened that no one expected. The loud emergency alarm suddenly screamed through the prison. Red lights flashed across every hallway. Guards rushed toward the yard. A prison officer shouted into his radio. "He knows we're coming." Every inmate turned toward Ethan at exactly the same time. Then Ethan smiled. Not because he was happy. Because he had been waiting for this moment. What happened next would change the prison forever. But to understand that moment, we have to go back to the day Ethan Brooks first walked through the prison gates. The prison sat alone in the middle of dry land surrounded by high fences, razor wire, and concrete walls that looked impossible to escape. Inside those walls lived some of the most dangerous criminals in the country. Every hallway had cameras. Every door had heavy steel locks. Every move was watched. Or at least, that was what everyone believed. On a cold Monday morning, a prison bus stopped outside the front gate. Several new inmates stepped off the bus wearing bright orange uniforms and carrying small clear bags with their personal items. Among them was Ethan Brooks. He looked nothing like the others. He was calm. He spoke very little. He kept his eyes open and noticed everything. He counted the security cameras. He watched which guards paid attention and which ones looked bored. He noticed which inmates walked with confidence and which ones stayed close to the walls. He was learning before anyone even spoke to him. Officer Daniel Carter walked beside the new arrivals. "Listen carefully," he said. "Forget everything you think you know. Inside these walls, one mistake can cost you." Most inmates ignored him. Ethan did not. He listened to every word. After fingerprinting, photographs, and medical checks, Ethan was taken to cell block C. The air smelled like old concrete and metal. Doors slammed shut every few seconds. Voices echoed through the halls. Some inmates laughed. Others stared without saying anything. Ethan reached his cell and quietly placed his blanket on the bed. His cellmate, Marcus Hill, looked up from a worn paperback book. "You knew?" Marcus asked. Ethan nodded. Marcus studied him for a few seconds. "You should pick a group fast," Marcus said. "Nobody survives alone here." Ethan calmly shook his head. "I'm not looking for a group." Marcus laughed. "Everyone says that." Ethan gave no answer. That night, while most inmates talked loudly across the cells, Ethan sat on his bed and simply listened. He learned names. He learned who owed favors. He learned which inmates were respected. He learned which guards could be trusted. More importantly, he noticed something strange. Every prison gang hated the others. Every leader wanted more power. Every small fight made everyone weaker. Nobody was actually in control. The prison looked organized on the outside. Inside, it was full of fear, secrets, and broken trust. Ethan quietly smiled. He had already seen something that everyone else had missed. The next morning, breakfast was served. The cafeteria was loud. Different groups sat at different tables. No one crossed invisible lines. Marcus whispered, "Keep your eyes down." Ethan did the opposite. He watched every table, every leader, every guard, every camera. He noticed one inmate walking from table to table collecting small favors from different groups. Nobody stopped him. Nobody questioned him. That meant one thing. Information was worth more than strength. Ethan had just discovered the prison's real currency. Before lunch ended, a tall inmate covered in tattoos blocked Ethan's path. "My name is Tyler Mason," the man said. "Around here, everyone pays someone." The cafeteria became silent. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the new inmate. Marcus slowly stepped back. Even several guards stopped walking. Tyler leaned closer. "So tell me, rookie, who do you belong to?" Ethan looked directly into Tyler's eyes. Then he quietly spoke 6 words that made the entire cafeteria freeze. "I think you work for me." For one long second, nobody breathed. The cafeteria became so quiet that even the sound of a plastic tray hitting the floor seemed loud. Tyler Mason stared at Ethan Brooks. Then he laughed. A few inmates laughed with him. Others looked worried. Marcus Hill lowered his head. He thought Ethan had just made the biggest mistake of his life. No new inmate talked to Tyler that way. Tyler stepped closer until they were only inches apart. "You have 5 seconds to take that back," Tyler said. Ethan stayed calm. "I don't need 5 seconds." Tyler's smile disappeared. The guards began walking toward them, ready to stop a fight. Instead, Ethan asked a simple question. "Who told you to collect payments from every table?" Tyler blinked. "What? You don't keep the food," Ethan continued. "You don't keep the blankets. You don't keep the extra supplies. You collect them and give them to someone else. So who are you really working for?" Tyler did not answer. For the first time, he looked surprised. Several inmates exchanged nervous looks. Ethan had guessed something that almost nobody knew. Tyler was not the real leader. He was only the face people saw. Officer Daniel Carter stepped between them. "Enough," he ordered. "Everyone back to your seats." The moment was over, but the whispers had already started. How did the new guy know? Who told him? Is someone helping him? By dinner, nearly everyone in Cell Block C had heard about Ethan. Marcus looked at him with disbelief. "You've been here 1 day," Marcus said. "Now everyone is talking about you." Ethan looked out through the small window of the cell. "They're talking because they're curious." Marcus frowned. "Curiosity gets people hurt." "Sometimes," Ethan replied. "Sometimes it changes everything." That evening the prison settled into its usual routine. Doors locked. Lights dimmed. The loudspeaker announced final count. But Ethan did not sleep. He listened. He heard quiet footsteps in the hallway. A guard making an extra round. Someone tapping softly on a pipe 3 cells away. Another inmate answering with 2 taps. Messages were moving through the prison without anyone speaking. By sunrise, Ethan had figured out something important. The prison had its own secret language. It was not written down. It was not taught in books. It was passed from inmate to inmate through sounds, small hand signals, and tiny favors. Whoever understood that language could learn almost everything happening inside the prison. The next day, Ethan volunteered for kitchen duty. Marcus looked confused. "Nobody wants kitchen duty." "I do," Ethan answered. The kitchen gave Ethan something more valuable than easier work. It let him see inmates from every housing block. He watched who sat together, who refused to look at each other, who traded desserts, who secretly passed folded pieces of paper hidden under trays. Every small action told a story. One afternoon, an older inmate named Samuel Reed quietly sat beside Ethan. Samuel had spent more than 20 years behind bars. People called him Old Sam. He spoke slowly. "You ask too many questions," Samuel said. "I listen more than I ask," Ethan replied. Samuel smiled. "That's true." He looked around to make sure no one was listening. "You figured out Tyler isn't the boss?" Ethan nodded. "So who is?" Samuel became serious. "No one knows." "What do you mean?" "There are gang leaders," Samuel whispered. "There are crews. There are groups. But every now and then, they all stop fighting at the same time. Someone gives an order. Nobody knows who it comes from." Ethan leaned forward. "And everyone obeys?" Samuel nodded. "Every time. Before Ethan could ask another question, Samuel stood up and walked away. The conversation lasted less than 1 minute. But it changed everything. Now Ethan knew there was an invisible chain of command inside the prison. Someone hidden was controlling people without ever showing their face. For the next several days, Ethan kept learning. He never joined a gang. He never started arguments. He helped clean common areas. He shared extra bread with inmates who had none. He fixed broken chess pieces in the recreation room. People began trusting him. Not because he was strong, because he always kept his word. Soon inmates from different groups started asking him for small favors. Can you tell Marcus I need to speak with him? Can you ask the kitchen if there are extra apples? Can you find out if my library request was approved? Ethan always delivered the message exactly as promised. He never changed a single word. Slowly, people from rival groups began using Ethan as someone they could trust. Without realizing it, they were building his reputation. One evening Marcus shook his head. I don't get it. What? You don't threaten anyone? No. You don't fight? No. You don't act like a boss? Ethan smiled. The strongest person doesn't always need everyone to know they're strong. Marcus thought about those words for a long time. Later that night, while inmates returned to their cells, Ethan noticed something unusual. 3 different gang leaders stopped talking at the exact same moment. Each looked toward the upper walkway. There, standing alone near the railing, was a quiet inmate named Lucas Grant. Lucas had almost never spoken since Ethan arrived. He swept floors, read books, kept to himself. No tattoos, no loud voice, nothing that made him seem important. Yet every gang leader watched him with respect. Lucas slowly adjusted the sleeve of his prison shirt. That was all. Within seconds, inmates across 3 different housing blocks began moving in different directions as if they had received the same command. No words, no shouting, just one tiny signal. Ethan finally understood. The real power inside the prison was hidden in plain sight. And someone had just revealed a piece of it. As Ethan quietly watched Lucas disappear down the hallway, a folded note slid under his cell door. There were only 4 words written inside. Stop watching. You're next. Ethan picked up the folded note and read it again. Stop watching. You're next. Marcus looked over from his bunk. What is it? Ethan quietly slipped the note into his pocket. Nothing. Marcus knew that was not true. You've got that look again. What look? The one you get when you figured something out. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed. Someone doesn't want me asking questions. Marcus sighed. Then stop asking. Ethan slowly shook his head. If someone is trying this hard to scare me, it means I'm getting close. The morning whistle echoed through the prison. Cell doors opened one by one. Inmates walked into the hallway for another day inside the gray concrete walls. Everything looked normal. But Ethan noticed something had changed. People were watching him. Not just one group. Almost everyone. Some looked curious. Others looked nervous. A few quickly looked away whenever he noticed them. Word about the note had somehow spread without anyone speaking. The prison always seemed to know everything. After breakfast, Officer Daniel Carter called Ethan over. Walk with me. The two walked quietly down a long hallway lined with steel doors. Carter stopped near an empty storage room. I've worked here for 15 years, he said. I know. I've seen tough inmates. Ethan stayed silent. I've seen smart inmates. Still, Ethan said nothing. But I've never seen someone get this much attention in less than a week. Carter looked directly at him. So let me give you one piece of advice. I'm listening. Some doors stay closed for a reason. Then Carter walked away. Ethan watched him disappear around the corner. Even a guard was warning him. That meant the secret inside this prison was much bigger than he first thought. Later that day, Ethan returned to the library. It was one of the quietest places in the prison. Most inmates came only to pass time. Ethan came to observe. He noticed Lucas Grant sitting alone with an old history book. Lucas turned a page but never looked up. Ethan walked past him without stopping. As he reached the next bookshelf, he heard a calm voice. "You read people better than books." Ethan turned. Lucas was still looking at the pages. "You knew I was here," Ethan said. "I knew before you entered the room. You've been watching me." Lucas finally looked up. "No." A small smile appeared. "I've been measuring you." Ethan waited. Lucas closed the book. "Most people want power because they want others to fear them." "And you?" "I want order." The two men stared at each other. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally, Ethan asked the question he had wanted to ask since arriving. "Are you the one everyone follows?" Lucas gave no answer. Instead, he stood up. As he walked away, he quietly said, "Sometimes the person giving orders isn't the person people see." Then he disappeared around the corner. Ethan knew Lucas had answered without answering. That evening the prison yard opened for recreation. Groups played basketball. Others lifted weights. Some simply walked in circles. Ethan stayed near the fence, watching. Across the yard, Tyler Mason was arguing with another gang member. The voices grew louder. Several inmates stepped back. Everyone expected a fight. Instead, Lucas appeared on the second-floor walkway overlooking the yard. He didn't shout. He didn't wave his arms. He simply folded his hands behind his back. Almost instantly, Tyler stopped talking. The other inmate stepped away. Within seconds, the argument was over. The guards looked confused. Officer Carter frowned. He knew something had happened. He just didn't know what. Ethan smiled slightly. Now he had seen it with his own eyes. Lucas could calm dangerous inmates without saying a single word. But how? That question stayed in Ethan's mind all night. Over the next few days, Ethan paid attention to every tiny detail. He noticed that Lucas never asked anyone for anything. Instead, inmates came to him. One asked for advice. Another handed him a handwritten list. Someone else simply nodded before walking away. Lucas rarely spoke. Yet every conversation ended with people leaving calmer than before. Ethan realized something important. Lucas wasn't ruling with fear. He was ruling with trust. People believed he could solve problems fairly. That belief gave him influence. But Ethan also noticed something else. Every time Lucas helped settle a problem, another inmate quietly wrote something inside a small notebook. The notebook never left that inmate's hands. What was inside it? Names, debts, promises. Ethan needed to know. The chance came 2 nights later. During a heavy rainstorm, the prison lights suddenly flickered. For 3 seconds, part of cell block C went dark. When the lights came back on, the inmate carrying the notebook was gone. So was the notebook. Alarm bells echoed through the prison. Guards rushed through the halls. Cell doors slammed shut. Officer Carter shouted orders into his radio. An emergency count began immediately. As inmates stood outside their cells, Ethan noticed Lucas for the first time showing real concern. Not fear. Concern. That missing notebook mattered. A lot. Then Marcus quietly grabbed Ethan's arm. "Ethan." "What is it?" Marcus pointed toward the end of the hallway. The missing inmate had returned. He was breathing hard. His shirt was covered in dust. And clutched tightly against his chest was the notebook. Before anyone could reach him, he looked directly at Ethan and shouted, "I found out who's really trying to control this prison." At that exact moment, the hallway lights went out again. A loud crash echoed through the darkness. Then someone screamed. The scream echoed through the dark hallway. For a few long seconds, nobody could see anything. Some inmates backed against the walls. Others froze where they stood. Guards shouted orders. "Stay where you are. Nobody move." Then the emergency lights came on. The hallway glowed with a dim red light. Officer Daniel Carter hurried toward the sound. Ethan and Marcus looked down the hall. The inmate who had been holding the notebook was lying on the floor. He was awake, but the notebook was gone. Officer Carter knelt beside him. "Who took it?" he asked. The inmate slowly shook his head. It happened too fast. He looked around in confusion. I never even saw the person. The guards searched every nearby cell. They checked under beds. They searched lockers. They questioned dozens of inmates. Nothing. The notebook had disappeared. Marcus whispered to Ethan. How can something just vanish like that? Ethan looked toward the ceiling. It didn't vanish. What do you mean? Someone planned this. Marcus frowned. You think they knew the lights would go out? Ethan nodded. I think they knew almost everything. The emergency count lasted for hours. Nobody slept much that night. By morning, the entire prison was filled with rumors. Some inmates believed the notebook listed every secret deal inside the prison. Others believed it contained the names of people working together across different gangs. No one knew the truth. Only one thing was certain. Someone had been willing to take a huge risk to get it. Later that morning, Ethan was cleaning the library shelves when old Sam quietly walked in. He looked more serious than ever. You've stirred up the whole prison, Sam said. I didn't steal the notebook. I know. Sam looked around before speaking again. But you're asking the same questions someone else asked years ago. Ethan stopped dusting the shelves. What happened to him? Sam sighed. He was transferred. Really? That's the official story. Ethan noticed Sam's choice of words. The official story? Sam nodded. No one ever heard from him again. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Sam leaned closer. You think one prisoner controls hundreds of inmates? Don't they? Sam lowered his voice. Yes. But not the way you think. Before Ethan could ask another question, Sam quietly walked away. His words stayed in Ethan's mind all day. That afternoon, Officer Carter called Ethan into a small interview room. The room was plain. One table. 2 chairs. 1 security camera. Carter closed the door. I need to ask you something. Ethan nodded. Go ahead. Have you ever heard of a man named Victor Hayes? Ethan shook his head. No. Carter looked relieved. Good. Who is he? Carter hesitated. I shouldn't even have said the name. He stood up. Forget this conversation happened. Then he left the room. Ethan sat there alone. Now he had 2 mysteries. The missing notebook. And a name. Victor Hayes. That evening, Ethan returned to cell block C. Marcus was waiting. I found something. Ethan looked interested. What? Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny folded piece of paper. I found it under my mattress. Ethan carefully unfolded it. Inside was part of a prison map. Most of it was torn away. Only one section remained. A storage room near the old workshop had been marked with a dark circle. Across the top were 3 handwritten words. Truth is here. Marcus looked nervous. We should throw it away. Ethan folded the paper. No. Why not? Because someone wanted us to find it. Marcus stared at him. You think it's a trap? It could be. Then why go? Ethan looked toward the hallway. Because whoever controls this prison is starting to make mistakes. That night, after final count, the prison became quiet. Most inmates settled into their bunks. The lights dimmed. Footsteps echoed far away. Ethan waited. So did Marcus. An hour later, they quietly left their cells during an approved maintenance movement supervised by officers assigned to escort a small work crew. As they passed near the old workshop, Ethan noticed something unusual. The storage room door was slightly open. A thin line of light shined through the crack. Marcus swallowed hard. No one should be in there. Ethan slowly pushed the door open. The room was filled with old boxes, broken chairs, and dusty shelves. At first, it looked empty. Then Ethan noticed a small radio sitting on a wooden table. It was switched on. Static filled the room. Suddenly, a calm voice came through the speaker. I wondered how long it would take you. Ethan stepped closer. Who are you? The voice ignored the question. You've been asking the right questions. Marcus looked around nervously. "Where are you?" Again, no answer. Instead, the voice continued. "You think one prisoner controls hundreds of inmates." There was a short pause. "You're only seeing part of the picture." The radio crackled. "The person you're looking for isn't hiding from the prison." Another pause. "The prison is hiding him from you." The radio went silent. At that exact moment, heavy footsteps rushed toward the storage room from the hallway outside. Someone was coming. And there were far more footsteps than just one. The footsteps grew louder. Officer Daniel Carter pushed open the storage room door first. Several correctional officers followed behind him. "Step away from the table," Carter shouted. Ethan and Marcus raised their hands. "We didn't touch anything," Ethan said calmly. One officer picked up the small radio. It was silent now. No voice. No signal. Nothing. "It was talking a second ago," Marcus said. The officers searched the room from top to bottom. Behind an old shelf, they discovered a narrow maintenance tunnel that had been hidden for years. The tunnel led beneath several prison buildings. It connected storage rooms, utility spaces, and old maintenance areas that were no longer shown on the prison's current maps. Officer Carter looked at Ethan. "You were right. Someone has been moving around this prison without being noticed." The next morning, the prison warden ordered the largest investigation the facility had seen in decades. Every tunnel was searched. Every old record was reopened. Every camera recording from the previous year was reviewed. The investigation uncovered something shocking. There had never been a single violent mastermind secretly forcing hundreds of inmates to obey him. The truth was even stranger. Years earlier, an inmate named Victor Hayes had built a quiet system based on information instead of fear. He learned who needed help, who owed favors, who could settle arguments. Instead of ordering people to fight, he encouraged them to avoid conflict whenever possible because fights brought lockdowns that made life harder for everyone. When Victor was transferred to another prison years before, he left behind a simple set of unwritten rules. Keep your word. Pay back favors. Don't steal from other inmates. Don't start pointless fights. If there is a problem, solve it before someone gets hurt. Over time, those rules spread through the prison. Different inmates carried them forward. Lucas Grant became the person most inmates trusted because he followed those rules fairly. Tyler Mason collected favors, but he was never the real leader. Old Sam quietly advised younger inmates. Several trusted inmates helped pass messages. There was no king sitting on a throne. There was a network built on trust, reputation, and information. That was why it seemed as though one prisoner controlled hundreds of inmates. From the outside, everyone appeared to be following Lucas. In reality, hundreds of inmates chose to listen because they believed he would keep order and prevent unnecessary trouble. The missing notebook finally turned up inside a loose wall panel near one of the maintenance tunnels. It was not a list of criminal plans. It contained records of promises, debts that had been peacefully settled, requests for help, and reminders about inmates who needed protection from bullying or medical attention. The notebook showed just how much influence could come from knowing people instead of threatening them. Officer Carter handed the notebook to the investigators. "This belongs in the official report," he said. Lucas was questioned for many hours. He answered every question honestly. "I never wanted power," he explained. "I wanted fewer people getting hurt." The investigation found no evidence that Lucas had organized violent crimes inside the prison. However, prison officials concluded that no inmate should hold that much informal influence. Lucas was transferred to another correctional facility where inmates from the original prison could no longer rely on him. The hidden tunnels were permanently sealed. Security cameras were upgraded. New procedures were introduced so information could no longer travel through forgotten maintenance areas. Tyler lost the respect he had built through fear. Without Lucas quietly settling disputes, Tyler tried to act like the boss. It failed. People no longer believed loud voices meant strong leadership. Old Sam smiled when he heard the news. "Fear never lasts forever," he quietly said. Marcus looked at Ethan. "So, you figured it out?" Ethan nodded. "The strongest prison isn't the one with the tallest walls." Marcus waited. "It's the one where the truth finally comes out." Months later, Ethan completed his sentence and walked out through the same front gate where his story had begun. As he looked back one last time, he realized something important. The greatest mystery had never been how one prisoner controlled hundreds of inmates. The real mystery was why so many people had chosen to follow without ever asking questions. Sometimes, one person's influence can shape an entire place. But in the end, honesty, accountability, and the courage to uncover the truth are always stronger than fear or hidden power. And that was the story of how one prisoner seemed to control hundreds of inmates, and how the truth hidden behind the prison walls finally came to light.